Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining me today, this afternoon, I guess, and for those of you down in Australia and other parts of the world, thanks for joining us tomorrow morning. And here we go. We got a great call. You know, Tom, I was just reading a couple of weeks ago that they're predicting that the anti-aging market will double in the next 5 to 6 years, and I don't know if you know really what happened with me, but I was on my way to speak at an anti-aging conference when I went through Omaha, and Dan gave me a recording of your dad, and he was talking about TSX. He was talking about
Yeah.
TSX and then the triangle of life. But those were the things he was talking about. And I just heard all about the telomeres, and I was actually going to St. Louis to meet up with some of the guys that had done the research, like Dr. Blackburn, on the research on telomeres. So I was super excited about it, and when I found out how much more powerful our TSX was versus, and I won't name any names of any other products, but so much more powerful, like 300% more powerful than anything else. I was super excited, and boom, I was on board when I got back from St. Louis. I had my products here at the house already. I ordered them when I was down there, and I've been with Sizzle ever since. And you know what? And the part of Sizzle that I get so excited about is the anti-aging, because I think we're years ahead of everybody else. And when your dad sent me down to Australia in 2020 with all of the information about stemolytics. I mean, for 3 months prior to me going down there, your dad was sending me just piles and piles and piles of files on stemolytics, Ficitin and all these different things. But I had actually heard about Ficitin and some of the other ingredients because I read that Mayo Clinic had put out basically a report and said that they were going to be the top anti-aging clinic in the world. And I got interested, like, what are they doing that they think they're going to be on top of the world like this? And I discovered that they were researching Ficitin, and they were researching Glycertin and a few other things. And then when your dad told me that he was coming out with, he didn't have a name for stemolytics yet, but he gave me all the ingredients and sclereol and all that, and told me the story on it. Boy, I'll tell you, Tom, I just got super excited because I knew, according to Aubrey de Grey, that the next frontier in anti-aging was senescence, and here we are. And now it's all over the place. So I'll hand the microphone over to you. I'm going to mute myself out, and then you just tell me when you want me to run the next slide, and I'll do so.
Well, that sounds great, and you're right. What a whirlwind that we're really on, because things are coming in science faster and faster all the time. And I was talking to some interesting gentlemen yesterday on a project I'm working on. They said, statistically, we spend 95% of the money we'll ever spend in healthcare on the last 2 years of our life. And that kind of goes to what you're saying, anti-aging. And the last 2 years of our life, to spend 95% of all the money that we'll ever spend on that. And it kind of goes back to the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, because it's much easier to keep yourself healthy than it is to repair yourself when you're broke. It's kind of, you're a car guy and you know what it's like. Change your oil or don't change your oil. Well, do you want to get 300,000 miles out of it, or do you want to get 75,000 miles at it and burn up a motor? But it can be as simple as an oil change. But the hard part, as humans, we're looking to find out what are the reasons. And so as we travel one path in exciting new inventions in food additives and preservatives and chemicals and weed killers and all these things, they have a detrimental effect on our health. And a lot of times we have to take steps back. I mean, now all over the media, we're finding out just the last few days that whole milk. My dad was a huge advocate on whole milk his whole life. He grew up with a milk cow. Maybe that's where it started from. That's one good thing I had with my father is he promised, I'll never get you a milk cow. We'll have chickens and pigs and horses and everything else, but we won't have a milk cow. But he found great value in the fact that we had gardens. And even though we, at that time of my life, the 60s and 70s, we weren't into nutrition, to make nutrition for people, we made it for ourselves. And that's really where his desire came from. He wanted us to be as healthy as possible. And then, of course, we had kind of a dichotomy. We were in industrial chemical business here, but we were growing and making our own foods over here. And then with science and research, he found out that a lot of the harmful ingredients that we had over here in industrial chemicals were also in personal care products. And so it really kind of came all together. And so let's not worry about spending 95% of all of our healthcare costs the last 2 years of our life to fix what's broken. Let's talk a little bit about good nutrition and the discoveries. Now, you talk about the Mayo Clinic, they want to be the leading, and they're incredible. My hat goes off to the amazing research that they do. But you look at pharmaceuticals, almost half of them come from natural products. In fact, as we're on the call right now, there's been so much research into weight loss on GLP-1. Well, a few years ago, we really didn't even understand what that was and how it affects weight loss. And so all of these pharmaceuticals with the Ozempics have come out and people are losing weight because of that. But our body naturally produces it. And right now, as we're talking, in fact, I clicked on our Sisel website. I have a new category of 10 products that support natural GLP-1. It's the gut health products. It's Encompass 360. It's Sisel Rip. And there's going to be a banner that's probably going to be loaded in the next few minutes too. I think it has 6 or 7 studies that show amino acids and gut health and how they help to increase our body's natural GLP-1 process. Because there's great value in great nutrition and great natural substances. Pharmaceuticals obviously are taking half of those and trying to make them pharmaceuticals where they can regulate them. But, going way back 10,000 years ago, man's diet was 10 times more nutritious than it is today. Now, one more trip down memory lane. You brought up TSX. For those of you with the camera, this is a 1978 National Geographic, and this is the exact magazine that really got my dad fired up about anti-aging. So we'll go back 48 years ago, and this is a terracotta soldier. There were 10,000 of them buried in Xi'an, China, from about 200 BC. And he was amazed because there was a pharmaceutical wagon that was buried in the middle of all this that had the science on what they were doing specifically for longevity and what the emperors were taking. And so he made a goal that he wanted to get over to China at some point and talk about that. And that's before we were ever invested into making products that were anti-aging. And so in the 80s, he went over there and he was able to meet with officials with the Chinese government, and we brought over 2 products. And one of those products that you talked about, TSX, comes from that initial 1978 magazine interest, meeting with the government on the power of astragalus. Well, at that point in the 80s, we didn't know what part of the plant, so we used it all. We used the leaves, the stems, the roots, everything. And as science moves on, we get into the 90s, we map the human genome. So now we know what genes are, and we start to learn what different genes do, and eye color, hair color, weight, propensities towards cancer and different problems, high cholesterol. And we start to find out about genes, and we find out about the sirtuin gene. We're going to talk a little bit about resveratrol and that science that started at Harvard University. But my family has always had a big quest to help tackle, I'll say, graceful aging, but even more importantly, to live to what our human genome says we could live. It doesn't mean we're going to stop the bus from hitting us, or I guess in Doc's case, the motorcycle accident that nearly got him. But bad things happen. We can't get around that. But good nutrition is a choice that we can make, and to follow the science and to see what's out there. Sisel embodies going after this research, going clear back to this magazine in 1978, 48 years ago, that Tom Sr. piqued his interest, that let's get after it. And as I went to the University of Utah and was going through my classes and doing different things and different lab work, I spent a lot of time in the library. And my father would say, go look at this. But that time it was pretty much on harmful ingredients, because we were just finding out about the harm that we're doing to ourselves with what's in personal care. We started into that first. But today, Doc brought it up. Great point. I mean, from a business standpoint, anti-aging, boom. Boy, if you could, we all wish we would have bought silver when it was $3 an ounce. Well, right now you kind of have that opportunity, because if you're on the call, you're talking to the leaders in anti-aging research now for, well, really almost coming up on 5 decades, because we started back way before the human genome had been mapped, and before computers and the internet and all of this science. But we actively go after this research. So let's go to the first slide that we have, Doc. So Eternity, a product that I'm sure many people are familiar with, that we brought out. This comes from muscadine grapes, this science. And, what is resveratrol? Well, it's a natural ingredient that's found in Japanese knotweed. It's found in peanuts. It's found in muscadine grapes. They make red wine, but the highest concentrations pretty much are in Japanese knotweed or muscadine grapes. And so why is that important? Well, because in the human genome, we have a specific gene called a sirtuin gene that is directly related on how we age. And through demographic studies, seeing how people with unhealthy diets, we'll talk about that in a minute, live longer than the average age, we find that they consume resveratrol, particularly in red wine. Well, at Sisel, we want to find what is the best way to deliver that. What is the right amount to deliver? But equally important, what are the cofactors that make it even more bioavailable or last longer in our system? Because it supports our genes that regulate, this is an important part that we don't talk a lot about, the growth of stem cells also. So as it activates the sirtuin genes that help to increase our youthful hormones, give us better cardiovascular health and all the wonderful things that resveratrol does, stem cells are the very base that our bodies are built on. And so we have this underlying level of cells that at some point become differentiated, meaning at one point they could become part of your eye, part of your finger, part of your hair. But when I was going to university, we did a lot of studies on basal stem cells. We would actually take amphibians, and you could actually take a tadpole at some point and make the tail grow on its forehead, because the stem cells hadn't become differentiated. But at some point, there's a chemical reaction that cell now is going to be part of the skin, part of a heart, and it no longer will attach somewhere else. Well, Tom Sr., I remember he had a magazine once that had a human ear that was grown on a mouse. And it showed a picture of a mouse with a human ear on it, because they were able to take stem cells that were not differentiated. And so the sad part about it, as we become older, our stem cells become senescent. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We have products to help remove those, because if they're just taking up space, we want to get rid of them so new stem cells can be produced, because our body repairs itself by producing new cells. Well, back to resveratrol, that's an important key factor. It supports the genes that help regulate stem cells. It helps our body protect against DNA damage. It's a great antioxidant. And when you get a sunburn and it blisters and becomes inflamed, it's because we have DNA damage, and then it can't repair itself, and you get a blister and you peel. And so by helping our body protect the DNA within, that's your map of who you are within each gene. Guess what? We get better cell duplication. And then that will tie into the telomeres, the ends of these DNA strands. We'll talk about that also. Now, one exciting thing about resveratrol, it boosts our metabolism. That's the rate that we convert substances to energy, and we have more energy to do more things. That equates into better stamina and better rest and better repair. And resveratrol is directly linked to that also. Let's go to the next. Now, in this slide is a depiction of how fast we age. So when you're born, we take that first year as the base, that it's 12 months, you become 1 year older. But because of many things like poor nutrition, oxidative stress, where you live, you might have bad air, bad water, a bad diet. You have a rise in toxins that are assaulting your body. And guess what happens? 1 year, all of a sudden, in 1 year, you really age almost 1.2 by the time you're 30. And between 40 and 50, in 1 year, you're really averaging about 2.2 years. And when you're 50 or 60, boy, it's about 2.5 years. And I'm talking about biological aging. And so by the time we get in our 60s and 70s, we travel, around the sun one time. We've really biologically aged about 3 years. Now, the exciting part is our genetic potential, our DNA is structured such that we should live to be 120 to 150 years of age if everything stays in balance. And that means we take care of cellular damage. We protect the ends of our DNA strands, and we activate the sirtuin gene to slow down this biological aging that we're inherently going through. As exciting as science is, it does brings incredible discoveries, but also we have thousands of new chemicals produced every year and more contaminants in the system that actually creates more problems for us biologically. So Sisel is determined that we're going to help you maximize your biological age, because that's the important thing. It's not I'm 73, I'm 42. It's how young are you? It's kind of that thing about a vehicle. You have 10,000 miles on it, or 10,000 kilometers, or 300,000 kilometers. That's really the wear and tear on your body is really the same thing. Let's go to the next. So the French paradox, talking about resveratrol, they found that, along the Rhine River Valley, there's a lot of vineyards. I've floated down that river before, and there's vineyards all over, and they really don't eat any healthier. A lot of bread, a lot of cheese, a lot of red wine. And in demographic studies, when they have gone around the world to find out why certain populations of people live longer, they found that the French along there, they had improved cardiovascular outcomes despite a high-fat diet in these French people. And so they weren't necessarily eating lots of fiber, lots of fruits, lots of vegetables. And so what they wanted to do was tear apart the diet, because genetically, they had ancestors and they had people who had migrated to other areas. But for some reason in this Rhine River Valley, they were living longer than people with the same genetic profile that they had. And what they found after thousands and thousands of substances, let's go to the next. They found that they lived longer because of the resveratrol they were consuming. And so they found that then they wanted to find out what genes were activated by it, and it was the sirtuin gene. And an amazing person, Dr. Sinclair, he was a professor of genetics at Harvard University. He was the one who uncovered this. And he found that, well, you can read here if you have your camera on, new research reinforces claim that red wine compound resveratrol interacts with key genes in the mitochondria. And so this was very responsible for linking it to greater youth. And particularly, it was heart health that they found that it helped immensely. And since that time, they've discovered the sources of resveratrol. You don't have to becoming a raging alcoholic to stay young. You can get it without all the alcohol. And so with Sisel, we wanted to find out how much would it take. And so the average resveratrol concentration in a bottle of wine is 1.7 milligrams. But the amount that you really need to be activated was much more. And so in one bottle of Eternity, it has about 258 bottles of wine worth of resveratrol. And so every time you have a serving of resveratrol, it would be equal to about 8 bottles of red wine. And so this was the amount, and that's really key too, because so many times we see people in the industry, they'll wave a chicken over a pot of water and call it chicken soup. Well, there's no chicken in that water, just water. And so we want you to have the amount that you need. And then also we want to have the right form. Now, one thing that you'll find a lot of times, you'll go into stores and they'll have it in capsules and tablets and powders and things. Liquid is by far the best, because when you drink it, it goes into your gut and then it's absorbed into the bloodstream, and you lose over 90% of it on the first pass. The liver will filter it out very quickly. And so when you take Eternity, you need to hold it in your mouth. 20, 30 seconds seems like a long time, but you can hold it that long in there, because you get what we call submucosal or sublingual absorption. It will start to penetrate into the skin and go into your circulatory system to start to go throughout your body. And then you can swallow it. And the same thing, as it goes down your throat, your body starts to utilize it. You get a much bigger impact for that. In fact, in blood work, about 300% more resveratrol is in the blood when you take it in a liquid form versus a solid dose form that goes straight to the gut, that quickly goes into the system and is filtered out by the liver. Let's go to the next. When we first started with resveratrol, there were hardly any studies on that. And one thing about it, just like Doc said, the anti-aging market's going to double. And the same thing, people put money into science where they're getting great results. And because of that, you can see initially there were about 454 studies. Now there's close to 20,000 studies on resveratrol, because they're finding this is a real miracle molecule and is doing so much in the positive to help people age better and live longer and healthier lives. Let's go to the next. Wish we had PubMed back when I was going to college. That would have made life a lot easier. I was on the Dewey Decimal System. And so some of the things that I like to put in here, you'll see the bottom ingredient here, quercetin. In fact, we have quercetin also in stemmolytic, and it's really a very powerful flavanol, a great antioxidant. But studies also show that in combination with resveratrol, it also, I want to say it's 200 to 300% also increase in resveratrol throughout your system when it's combined. Oh yeah, I do have a slide on that. And so it greatly increases the amount of resveratrol in your system. And so it also has a lot of anti-carcinogenic, anti-inflammatory properties too. It's a great antioxidant. And so there's a real synergistic effect with this and enhances bioavailability. There's some great study now on cognitive function, along with metabolic balance, when these two are combined also. Initially, it was heart health, but they're finding out that's why there's almost 20,000 studies that there's a lot of additional research out there showing that by having these higher doses of resveratrol in combination with specific ingredients, that there's even more benefits than greater cardiovascular health and also hormone balance. We see that we turn on the sirtuin gene, we have elevated levels of more youthful hormones. Let's go to the next. Another study here on the screen, combination of resveratrol and quercetin. The nice thing about with the internet, if you really want to get into the research, there's lots of good science out there that you can see that definitely a lot's going on with this product. And you can see this study here, synergistic effects on body fat accumulation. And that was one thing that's interesting too. They find in this region that people's weight was better. And obesity is obviously a lot of things come out of being overweight. We think of joint health, but cardiovascular, stamina, the ability to detoxify our bodies a lot if we get our weight better managed. And definitely resveratrol combined with quercetin has a great, helps our body metabolize white fat that we're storing. And so a great other benefit of this product. Let's go to the next. And so here you can see 310% better absorption when the two are combined. Something also that I've added to this is pepper. Pepperine, black pepper extract, that also adds in bioavailability. In the gut, that shows that we uptake it better. And so there's not a resveratrol product on the market like this with the pepper extract, with the quercetin, with the amounts of resveratrol. This one is designed around the latest studies to show the benefits of resveratrol. Let's go to the next. Plus, it tastes pretty darn good too. And so here on the slide, you're looking at what happens when you take a solid dose form, a capsule of resveratrol. 97% is metabolized within 24 hours. But when we take a liquid dose, we get sublingual absorption. And then we have 300% more bioavailability that can pump through the heart to go throughout our body because it affects every single cell in the body. And because of that, we want to get it in there and not get it filtered out in the liver too quick. Let's go to the next. So as they map the human genome, like I said earlier, we're designed to live 125 to 150 years. And let's do everything we can. And that's the nice thing that my dad instilled with me when I was a kid, pulling weeds in the garden, Let's live as long as we can, but even more importantly, let's live as healthy as we can for as long as we can. Let's go to the next. So stem cells, let's go back to that a little bit. So stem cells, when you're, first conceived and you're, an embryo, a blastoma, you're growing, duplicating and everything, we're born with a very large amount of stem cells, and they can develop into our arms or fingers, all the different things. When a stem cell divides, each new cell has the potential to become another type of cell. And that's really where the science, when I was going to the university, was at. What are the factors that differentiate a stem cell? Now, stem cells in general are believed to be up to 100% active when we're 20 years old. So when you're Doc's age, my age, typically by age 60, only 2% are thought to be active. So there's really a lot of dead wood there that we need to remove, because at 20, our bodies are repairing, they're regenerating. We're able to, you see people, they get older, it takes longer to heal. It takes longer to get over sicknesses. There's so many things. And it all starts with a healthy stem cell. So what can we do to activate to bring up our stem cells and to remove that dead wood, get those stem cells out of there. Let's go to the next. So what happens with a cell or a stem cell? Uh, Over time, we have what we call glycation lipofussion. And so that's really the binding of sugars and proteins, and they become basically pudding or gunk within the cytoplasm of the cell. It's very fluid when we're young, and within a cell is almost kind of its own universe. You have organelles in there, like let's say it's its own unit. It has a mitochondria, and you'll have vacuoles that will have transports. You'll have gates on the outer side that will allow nutrients in and remove toxins out. And the mitochondria is producing ATP, which is that electrical energy, it's like a little power plant in there. But what happens over time is these proteins and sugars fuse together, they create plaque and sludge. So the communication between the different organelles and the transports in and out of the cell, it's like running in mud up to your waist. It just can't move. But the exciting thing about it is through the right type of nutrition, we can clean that up. And this is where the age pill was designed, and a lot of great science with that, to help give us the components to once again liquefy, remove, and regenerate to get that lipofussion out of there. By cleaning these stem cells from this effects of this advanced glycation, guess what? We can help eliminate a lot of the effects of aging. And it can help us feel more energetic. That's probably one of the biggest things people start feeling with the age pill. I got more energy. Well, guess what? Everything's running smoother in and out of all these trillions of cells within your body. You start to feel younger because you're right down to the cellular level. You're cleaning up all of this and regenerating it. And then when you take a product like Eternity and you're trying to activate those sirtuin genes in the mitochondria, guess what? Boom, they can get in the cell, they get cleaned up, they get activated, and then, we biologically can help to reduce that biological age, because that's what it's all about. Let's go to the next. And so we have many different products. And, one thing I will say, don't get analysis paralysis, as Dad would say. Don't think you have to know every single thing about every product. That's what we do here. And so not everybody's the same. Some people have joint pains they're really concerned about, or they want better brain health. And, there's some basic products, and Doc Fizz is probably the top of his game with this. He can help you have something for general overall health. Triangle of Life is probably the great place to start. But as we dig into joint, we dig into muscle recovery, brain health, we're always bringing the latest science into products to help people live longer, be more youthful, have more energy. Now, here's a picture of the manufacturing facility right here where I'm at in Utah, Supernaturals. This wasn't the first. Our first was actually a little barn we had, and I'd haul the water from the house. We were making industrial chemicals, no power or anything. And over time, one time we had a big facility in New Zealand. We've had 3 or 4 facilities here in America. This is very state of the art, meaning the type of manufacturing, the scientists that do the research along with me. I'm the head of the R&D, the chief science officer. And I would say more than anything, where I'm at in life is to make sure we maintain the Mowers mission. That was started, really back in 1978 when Dad first really got interested in anti-aging, that there were discoveries being made out there to make sure that our scientists, they can go to school, they can learn about things, but they have to understand the effects of harmful ingredients also, because we don't want to destroy our good health by using products that actually deteriorate that. Let's go to the next. And so this is the age pill that I was talking about right here. I think the slides they gave me, Doc, are different than the slides they gave you, but I like them. Uh, the age pill is designed for that glycation to help remove that sludge that builds up over time. And it's an incredible product. The H pill stands for anti-glycation extreme, and so incredible product. Let's go to the next. And lipofusion, and the bottom bullet point, that's really the big one, increases ATP, adenosine triphosphate or ATP. This is your biological energy. And a product we're really not going to talk about today, but biological hydrogen, just the smallest atom out there, is used so much throughout your body, and it'll diffuse through about any different membrane that your body will have. And we have the H2 sticks that we can add to water and drink. And then we can add hydrogen, because one thing about ATP, that's your body's electrical currency that gives us energy. You have to have hydrogen, because ATP has 3 phosphate molecules, and as we take one off, it releases energy, and that's what keeps our body going. It goes from ATP to ADP to AMP, and then we have a process that we reattach them. Well, it takes hydrogen to do that. And so a product we're really not going to talk about today that's an amazing product is the H2 sticks. And they taste great. You just add them in a bottle of water, and it gives you all this hydrogen going throughout your system to help increase your energy. Let's go to the next. So TSX. So going back to the terracotta soldiers with the astragalus, and Doc Fizz going down through Nebraska and Oklahoma, hearing about telomeres. So telomeres are the very ends of your DNA strands, and we're going to talk. I think I'll probably have a slide here that will show a picture of that here in a minute. And so, oh yeah, here we go. And so when you're born, you have 15,000 base pairs of ends on these telomeres, the caps on the DNA. And when they duplicate, guess what? They become shorter. And we always use the analogy kind of like shoelaces. You know how shoelaces at the end become frayed over time, and pretty soon you got to replace those. Well, when you're first conceived, you have 15,000 base pairs. In 9 months, when you're born, you've already used a third of those. Now, one thing that most people have in common when they just die of natural causes is they're down to about 5,000 base pairs. And so science has really looked at that and thought, why is that happening? Well, as we fray the ends of our DNA strands, because when we replicate a cell, which you're doing, billions of these every single day, and you're using that DNA as a blueprint for the next cell that's being produced in your system, they become shorter. You get more mutations because you don't have the base pairs. And then what happens? We get more disease, we get more breakdowns, we don't get good duplication like when we're young. So what can we do to actually increase this? So science studied this very heavily, and they found that there's an enzyme called telomerase. Makes sense because it repairs telomeres. Well, once again, we know that by the time we become older, we don't have very much telomerase in our system. Well, going back to these terracotta soldiers, that existed thousands of years ago, and this medical wagon that was in with the terracotta soldiers, when my father Tom went to China and met with them, they had the actual studies in there that said astragalus for some reason, and back then the ancient Chinese had studied rats and mice and silkworms and humans. And now the modern Chinese government was studying it also. And they found that in silkworms and chickens and rats and everything, that productivity and longevity was increased about 20 to 30%. And so they knew it had something to do. And this was before the human genome was even mapped. They didn't know that it was increasing telomerase. So at that time, we brought out a product called Emperor's Formula, and it had astragalus in it. We brought out a product called Life Enhancer. It didn't have astragalus, but had a lot of the same effects. But we brought that out. Well, we fast forward, And as we map the human genome, we find out about telomerase can repair telomeres. Can we go from 5,000 base pairs back up to 6, 7, 8, 10,000? We find out that they can repair if we increase it. We find out that astragalus has a couple of components, cycloastragenol and astragluside 4, that is only found in the tip of the root of the astragalus plant and typically on a 3 to 4 year old plant. Well, this is the beauty of science. We went from 2,000 years ago, the Chinese just knew just get the whole astragalus plant. In fact, back then they outlawed it. Only the emperor and his family could even consume it. It was because they knew that it really had great results on overall health and longevity. Now, science was able to narrow it down to the age of the plant, the part of the plant, the tip of the plant, the root, and the specific ingredients. So we brought out a product called TSX, and that contains cycloastragenol and astragluside 4. And that is the component that we know through science helps to activate and help to support in our body's natural ability to increase telomerase. And now there's clinics around that will actually draw your blood and measure your telomeres, and they'll give you your biological aging against your chronological aging. And people have actually gone and done this with TSX. And guess what? They find that biologically, maybe, chronologically, you can't turn back the hands of time, but biologically, it is possible to do that. And going back to, we get down to 5,000 base pairs, we're really on thin ice at that point. It's nice to help to maintain the ends of our DNA strands so that we get better duplication. So TSX is an amazing product, and one that I highly recommend to people. Let's go to the next. Stemolytic. Now, this is a real companion product. When I talk to people about DNA, cellular, I really talk about 3 products. The H pill, let's clean up that cell. TSX, let's repair that DNA so that we're getting great duplication. But then, an old guy like Doc, I'm saying, let's get rid of those senescent stem cells that aren't doing their job. And so you read a lot of the scientific literature, they talk about them as being zombie cells. I mean, they're taking up space, but they are zero productive. And so we want to encourage apoptosis or cellular death of these zombie cells to get them out. Now, science has gone in and they have discovered that there are specific ingredients that help encourage to remove those cells. This is what Stemolytic is for. And you're going to take this about every other day. And this is going to help to remove those, because guess what? We remove the zombie cells, we make room for a new stem cell. And what happens? If all of a sudden we're down to 2 or 3% working, it can only get better as we remove these that are taking up space for new stem cells. Let's go to the next. And so, it is one size doesn't fit all, because we're all a little bit different. There's 220 types of senescent stem cells, and there's different mechanisms for them to create apoptosis or cellular death. So we've formulated a very broad complex of really 8 different ingredients. And you'll see one here is quercetin once again. So when you're taking Eternity, it's also helping to decrease the number of senescent stem cells. And we find a lot of this in science. There's overlaps in 2 different areas. One product we're not going to talk about on this call is fucoidan. It's probably the greatest overall anti-aging product ever that I've ever seen. I mean, TSX is so specific and wonderful for DNA and telomere length and protection on that. But fucoidan is adaptogenic, meaning it will really affect so many different parts of your body. But here's a list of all the different things that we have in this product. I won't go through each one of those, but each one of these has a benefit in supporting apoptosis in zombie or senescent stem cells to remove them from our system. When we're young, we don't think about this. And when we're older, we get more concerned about it. I've really dedicated the majority of my life, and my father did also, into researching the science. And today I'm actually looking into a lot of ingredients for better sleep, and there's a lot of studies in corn leaves actually today that I've been reading about. This is really the benefit that you have with Sisel. We're not a publicly traded company. We're not a private equity company. It's something that we do every day, and not because it's a job. It's because we like it. It's fun, and it brings back memories for me of 1978, and I see this piece of this puzzle that my father and I have been putting together. And during my time to see the human genome mapped and thinking about things back in the early 80s with the astragalus, till we find the exact molecule and why it works and how it works and how it affects aging. And so it's an incredible journey that Sizzle's on. Now, we've coupled that with an amazing business opportunity, and Doc really started the call with that. Anti-aging is about the biggest sector out there, because guess what? Nobody is going to, live forever. Everybody's going to age, so everybody has an interest in staying as healthy for as long as they can. Let's go to the next. Is that the last slide?
Yes, that's actually the last slide, Tom.
Okay, so this is kind of a nutshell of some of the real high points on these products. There's hundreds of thousands of studies out there on ingredients in fucoidan, and each one of these, what is apigenin, what is curcumin. I mean, curcumin, there's so many different things in that. And there's some overlaps in these, and you'll see sometimes like quercetin's in stimulatic, it's in resveratrol, because there are so many benefits. But the whole underlying basis is there's great power in great nutrition. Pharmaceuticals know that. That's why almost half of the pharmaceuticals come from natural substances. Our diet years ago, 10,000 years ago, was healthier than it is now. That's why we have Encompass to give us. We need folate, we need vitamins, we need minerals, supplementation. USDA has studies back over 100 years how vitamins and minerals have declined by 70-80% in common things like tomatoes and Brussels sprouts and broccoli and lettuce. Our nutrition is going down. I love science. Science is where I've spent majority of my whole life, because every day is exciting. There's some new discovery out there. Is it luck that you found Sizzle? Maybe, but I'll tell you what, if somebody, your upline's on there, you ought to thank them, because you've really found the company that is the leader in anti-aging, and we're 110% in. If there's a newer, better way, we're going to do it, because results are everything. I can't tell you how many meetings over the years my dad, we'd have somebody would say, but we can't do it for this. And he'd say, and guess what? That's the same, that excuse gives me the same results as everything else. Zero. We're here to solve the problems, but we're here to make an incredible business opportunity, which I think we've done. We've had, double-digit growth every year for the last 5-6 years. And, we've got so many things going internationally right now. It's amazing. Probably the biggest thing I'm excited about this year, we're going to do so much more for Australia. And we had some big calls yesterday with people we have working there, and 3PLs, and we're working on so much for Australia. This is really going to be a big year for Australia, and a lot of great things going on. So, Doc, I appreciate the opportunity to be on your call today.
Well, thanks for joining us, Tom. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. When you're talking about all this, I mean, I'm looking at this slide here, and I remember the pages and pages and pages that your dad sent me, and he said, "Learn that stuff," and
Yeah.
and it was funny, and I mean the sclereol, just the sclereol. He and I spent a whole day just talking about sclereol, and
Oh yeah.
amazing, amazing ingredient and things like that. But yeah, the anti-aging, I really think that if people would grasp it and understand, they'd really know that Sizzle is. I mean, we are not just the leader in the network marketing industry as far as anti-aging, but I think we're one of the leaders in the whole industry.
Absolutely, because we're not competing for shelf space. I'm not worried about the flashiest lure out there to get you to stop with your shopping cart. I want you to be educated. I want you to have the latest, greatest science because results are everything. Let's not be the people that spend 95% of their healthcare costs the last 2 years of their life. Let's take care of our great health we have right now because I'll tell you what, it's that thing, ounce of prevention. And by taking great supplements, that make us healthier, let's not let's maintain this and let's live to our genetic potential. And there's no reason why we can't get another 5, 10, 20 years out of our life, but more importantly, have a healthy life and enjoy life.
You bet. Tom, you mentioned the Human Genome Project. Back in 1999, when the Human Genome Project was finished, I had my genome actually mapped. It cost me over $3,000 to have that done. Now I just had one of my patients do it, and it was $200.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
In in
It's
26 years, the price went down that much, and they mapped out 36,000 genes for my patient, and they can tell her, where the mistakes are in her genetic code. So now
yeah,
she can super laser focus on those things on top of just doing the general health. So it's a lot of fun to see it.
that's right. That's right.
So, well,
Yep.
thanks for being with us, Tom. I know a lot of you have got to get going and get your day started, and some of us are finishing our day. And I appreciate you being on the call, Tom. Thanks for being with us. And I'll get this recording done, and I'll get it out to everybody, and share it with people, and let them know that we really have this fantastic company headed by Tom and his family and all the scientists that work there, and the fantastic mission that they are bringing us. So, thank you.
Okay. Have a great evening.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kurt. That was just incredible. Really
All right.
appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.